Hello Mako fans. Today we're going to go through all of our new Stoneware glazes and give the characteristics of them, and hopefully these tips will help you have successful glazing. We're going to start off today with Passion Flower, which is SW 190, and it has the base glaze of Eggplant. And Eggplant is a very stable glaze. It doesn't move, so you can glaze really right up to the bottom and has success, but it does have crystals in it, so these crystals will cause some more movement. So we always recommend when you apply the crystals, try not to apply them real close to the bottom of your piece, and if you do have crystals on the close to the bottom edge of your piece, I recommend just scraping them off with a palette knife, or just with your finger you can rub them off usually, and you can just rub them back up into the jar of glaze. So this is what Passion Flower looks like on a white Stoneware clay body. Okay. If you use a speckled clay body, so you can see the speckled, it looks like this. Not much change at all. With the brown clay body, a dark brown clay body, you can see it does get a little bit more of a surface texture. It becomes much more matte, okay, but the color remains the same. If you use a black clay body, it stays the same. And at cone 10 reduction, it just gets a little bit lighter. So it's on a white clay body in cone 10 reduction. So it just gets a little bit fainter, but still no movement. Passion Flower is food safe and dinnerware safe. Our next glaze is Peppered Plum, and it has a base glaze of Speckled Plum, which is SW 113. So Peppered Plum looks like this on a white clay body. It also has crystals in it. So once again, if you have crystals near the edge of your bottom of your piece, we recommend removing those crystals. It has some really large crystals. Those are the ones that are going to have more movement than the small speckled ones. So if you have any of these real large crystals, you want to make sure you wipe those away from the bottom of your piece. On a speckled clay body, it remains the same. A dark brown clay body, you're seeing it's starting to have a little bit more movement and gets deeper, richer color. And on a black clay body, actually becomes kind of cream looking. And then cone 10, white clay body, white stoneware, fired cone 10 reduction. It becomes much darker. The carbon in it is trapping the carbon and becomes a little bit sootier. I guess I'd say sootier. Peppered Plum is food safe and dinnerware safe. You can see we have an icon here for dinnerware safe. Our next glaze is Amaryllis. So Amaryllis looks like that, a beautiful looking glaze that has a base glaze of SW 205 Coral. So Coral also is a non-mover, so you can glaze, it's a very stable glaze. So that base glaze of Coral doesn't move. You can glaze right up to the very bottom, preceding your glaze lines. But once again, this glaze has crystals, so you want to make sure that the crystals are near the bottom. So on a speckled clay body, it gets a little bit deeper, a little richer. You can see the manganese specks coming out of that clay body. On a dark brown clay body, it becomes much deeper, much richer. Coral is a transparent glaze, so you really can see the glaze body underneath this glaze. Amaryllis glaze, you can see the clay body. A black clay body, much deeper, much richer. Seeing the black clay body through the Amaryllis glaze. And then cone 10, white stoneware body, cone 10 reduction. You can see even at cone 10, I've glazed right up to the very edge pretty much, and it's not flowing. The crystals will flow. You can see the movement of the crystals, but the base glaze of Coral stays stable. Amaryllis is food safe and dinnerware safe. Our next glaze is Ivy. So it's SW193. Ivy has this beautiful gloss finish to it. This is on a white Stoneware clay body, fired to cone 6, medium speed, nothing special. I would say this is the sister of Nimbus. So Nimbus are brother and sister, and they both perform the same. If you have a rapid cool, you'll get more of the pixelation. If you have a matte or a slow cool, a kiln that's densely packed, that has a whole lot in it, and slows cooler, you might have more of a matte finished. Speckled clay body, you do start to see the manganese specks come through. You can see where it breaks, you can see the clay body. So on any texture, it'll break. So this drastically changes, just like Nimbus did. It drastically changes on a dark clay body. So you can see the results between white clay body, dark clay body, drastic change. And then on a black clay body, just like Nimbus, I really love the results of Ivy on a black clay body. So Ivy and Nimbus perform beautiful on black. And then if you do a cone 10 reduction, you can see the crystallization that's forming. This was fired cone 10 reduction gas kiln. So like Nimbus, its brother or sister, it is very heavy mover. So you can see a glazed left plenty of area on the bottom for the glaze to run and move. So once again, if you're using this on the outside of your piece, I recommend that you leave plenty of space for it to move, and you can test it out on the inside of a cup or inside of a bowl first. Ivy is food safe, dinnerware safe. Next glaze is Nimbus, which is SW194. So Nimbus has this beautiful blue and variegated white. Depending on the cooling rate, you can get very different results. So this glaze is I would say an advanced glaze. The technique of how you're firing and cooling down your kiln can greatly affect the properties of the glaze, the finished look. A slower cool will end up in more of a matte finish. A rapid cool can give you more of the gloss and the pixelated finish. So on a speckled clay body, and you can see on this piece, we're not trying to hide anything. You can have some surface irregularities. So you can see a couple pinholes occurring from the outgassing of the manganese. So we did not fire this with a hold, but I would recommend if you're using a speckled clay body to do a 10 or 15 minute hold at the end. And that should help prevent the pinholing. On a brown clay body, this glaze completely changes. You can see how it's now become cream. So comparison, white clay body, brown clay body, drastic change. I love this black clay body with Nimbus. Getting really all this pixelation occurring. So this black clay body was fired to cone 6. And then cone 10 reduction, you can see that it becomes a little bit paler, more green comes out, a little bit deeper, richer blue. So Nimbus is dinnerware safe and food safe. It is a mover. So an example is this vase. You can see how much the glaze moved. This was unglazed and it was glazed to here, and you can see the movement drips. So we recommend testing it out like on the inside of a bowl or on the inside of a cup. Or if you do it on the outside, your first time, recommend leave plenty of space for it to move. Next up we have Riptide. So Riptide is SW195. It's a matte finish. I would say it is not a gloss matte. It's a pure matte, not semi-gloss. A pure matte glaze. You can see it on a speckled clay body. Manganese specks are coming through, so it's transparent, where it'll let the clay body show. So on a speckled clay body, you can see how it's letting the clay body show through a brown clay body. So drastic change between white stoneware and brown stoneware. Drastic change. Then on a black clay body, and then cone 10 reduction. You can see how it gets a little bit sootier. It's trapping the carbon from the gas kiln. So Riptide, it is food safe. Is not recommended for dinnerware. You can see our icon on the jar. So we do not recommend it for dinnerware because due to surface durability, due to it not being dinnerware safe. If you do want to use it on, say, a cup or a bowl, we'd recommend that you do it on the outside of the cup or the outside of the bowl, or if on a cup, you just do it to where your lips would touch and leave that part glaze with the dinnerware safe glaze. All right, our next glaze is SW196, which is Sand Dollar. So Sand Dollar has this beautiful sand color to it. It is gloss, but it seems to have also a deep kind of matte finish. So I would say that this is semi-gloss maybe. It looks matte, but it has a glossy finish over top. I don't know how to explain that, but that's the best I can. So on a speckled clay body, you can see it covers up most all the manganese specks, so it's hard to see the manganese specks through it, but it does break beautifully over texture. Then a big change on brown clay body. Once again, so this should be a trend that you're kind of seeing, that on a brown clay body, the glaze drastically changes. And really drastically changes on a black clay body. So comparison, white clay body, black clay body, drastic change. And then one of my favorite glazes firing in cone 10 of these new glazes is Sand Dollar, because it turns to this beautiful purple variegated with white specks in cone 10 reduction. So absolutely love this glaze at cone 10 reduction. It is food safe and dinnerware safe. All right, next up is SW197, which is called Fossil Rock. So Fossil Rock is a matte glaze, very matte finish. It does pool glossy, so if you have a texture, you can see here where it's pooled, it becomes glossy. So if you have texture, you may have some glossiness to it. On a speckled clay body, you can see the manganese specks are really coming through. Then on a dark brown clay body, you can see the clay body showing through. Black clay body, very matte. And then white stoneware, cone 10 reduction. You can see how it turns white. And it breaks black. Big difference between cone 6 and cone 10. I really like this, performs really well in a cone 10 reduction because there's no movement. And it breaks with the texture. You get a very big contrast between the light and the dark. It is food safe. So Fossil Rock is a glaze that we do not recommend for dinnerware. So you can see on the icon, not recommended for dinnerware. Next color is Rose Quartz, which is SW198. So here is what it looks like on a white clay body fired to cone 6 medium speed You get these white pixelizations if you have more of a faster cool down. So if your kiln isn't completely packed to the very max, every inch of it stuffed in with glazeware, if you have a kiln that's a little bit loosely packed, you'll get more of this glossy, pixelated result. If it's very packed, it can become almost a matte glaze. You can see what it looks like on a speckled clay body. The manganese specks are starting to come through. On a dark clay body, I really like how it turns out on a black clay body. So that's a trend with most of these glazes. They really perform well on a black clay body. And then cone 10 reduction, get this purple and hues of red where it pools. It is a mover. Rose quartz is recommended for dinnerware safe, food safe, and dinnerware safe. Our next glaze is pink gloss, and it's SW511. Pink gloss is in the family of our 500 series of glazes, which are we call gloss glazes, but I like to call them the 500 series because they start at 500 and go up to 513. Gloss glazes are very stable glazes, super stable, no movement at all, and very heavy pigmented. So you get a true color that doesn't fade on you. And you can do light over dark, so opaque. So if I did a black and then put white over top of it, it'll stay white. They are intermixable glazes, so you can make your own colors with them. You can make your own shades. So they intermix totally perfect with adding yellow to red to make your own orange. The gloss glazes are also great for liners. So if you need a liner glaze for in the inside of your cup or bowl, they work great for that. Pink gloss is a very opaque, solid color. You can see there's no brush strokes, so it melts nice. You're not seeing different how you applied the glaze with the brush strokes. It melts nice and smooth. On a speckled clay body, see the manganese coming through, but because this glaze is so stable, you don't see the manganese melting into the glaze and actually like moving. They're staying just little specks, and they're not melting and moving. Then on a brown clay body, so the pink gloss doesn't really seem to like the brown clay body as much. It does have surface texture, so it's a little bit rough. So that's something you want to keep in mind with using the gloss glazes, that sometimes a dark brown, heavy iron clay, they may not like that. Then on a black clay body, loves it. And then cone 10 white stoneware clay body, cone 10 reduction, which is really crazy that we're keeping this pigment. So most of the time pink glazes fire out at cone 10. So we are keeping a very solid pink at cone 10 reduction, losing very little bit of color from cone 6 to cone 10. So it's something we're very proud of, and I think it's something that stands out what Mako does. The glosses are all food safe and dinnerware safe. Our next glaze is coral, which is SW512. So coral on a white clay body, very smooth surface finish, no brush strokes. On a speckled clay body, like the pink, this glaze is so, I would say, solid that the manganese specks don't run. They just stay as little specks, and you don't see any movement with the manganese. On a brown clay body, you can see it does have a little bit of a surface issue. So it's a little rough on this clay body, doesn't necessarily like it. So this is a dark brown clay body. But it might be a great surface for a sculpture. Black clay body, loves it. And then cone 10 reduction. Like the pink, the coral really stays true at cone 10, which is pretty amazing. You're going to get this deep coral red color still at cone 10 without any loss of saturation. Coral is food safe and dinnerware safe. And last but not least, my favorite color, brown. So on a white stoneware, it looks brown. And on a speckled clay body, you don't see the specks coming through. It's pretty opaque. Very little specks showing through. Brown clay body does have surface issues. So I don't recommend using these gloss glazes on a dark brown clay body unless you're doing some type of sculpture work where you want like a rough texture. On a black clay body, loves it. And then cone 10 reduction. So this is one of the gloss glazes that has a little bit of a change at cone 10. So you can see it's kind of hinting towards the green color. So keep that in mind if you do cone 10 reduction. It's not going to stay a true brown. It's going to have more of this greenish hue to it. The brown gloss is SW513, and it's in the gloss family. So all those gloss glazes go from 500 to 513. Totally intermixable. Great for liners, great for design work. They'll be very stable. And it's dinnerware safe and it's food safe. And that's all for the new glazes. I hope you have happy glazing times. Make it Mako.